define IUDs. What are IUDs? These are medicated devices. The word medicated is very important. We are no longer using non-medicated devices. IUDs are medicated devices intended to release a small quantity of drug into the uterus in a sustained manner over a prolonged period of time. Each word here is very important. They are medicated IUDs and they release a small quantity of the drug into the uterus in a slow, sustained manner over a long period of time. So, three most popular methods are oral contraceptive pills, the condoms or the diaphragms, and the IUCDs. When we talk about the IUCDs, if you see that their efficacy is very good, much more than even oral contraceptive pills or the condoms or the diaphragms. Now, what are IUCDs? It is a small object that is inserted through the cervix and placed into the uterus to prevent pregnancy. There is a string which hangs down from the IUD and is almost in the upper part of the vagina. It turns and goes back into the fornix. It is not noticeable or it is not felt during intercourse. The IUDs can show pharmacological efficacy for about 1 to 10 years. The IUDs, the mechanism of action is they work by changing the lining of the uterus and the fallopian tubes, affecting the movement of the eggs and sperm so that fertilization does not occur. So it is like an interceptive, not a contraceptive in the correct sense. It is an interceptive, so it prevents implantation and it alters the lining of the uterus and the fallopian tubes so that the movement of the eggs is changed. When development of IUCDs began early in the 1920s, initially what they used to do, those merchants who had camels, they used to put stones in the uterus of the camels to prevent them from conceiving. That is how the whole concept of IUD started. In the 1920s, the first generation of IUDs was constructed from the silkworm gut and flexible metal wire. It was called as a Grafenberg star and the Ottar ring. These are the first generation IUCDs. They were like a ring and from the silkworm gut and flexible metal wire. It fell into disrepute because of the difficulty of insertion. If it is like a ring, inserting into the uterus was very difficult and need for frequent removal because of the pain and bleeding. Subsequently, plastic IUDs of various sizes and shapes were made available like the Lippes loop. Various inert biocompatible polymeric materials like polyethylene, silicone were widely used to construct the IUDs. These devices cause more endometrial compression and myometrial distension because the size of the IUD was large and it causes distension of the uterus. It led to uterine clamps, bleeding, and expulsion of the IUDs. Researchers develop IUDs in last 30 years with the aim to add anti-fertility agents to more tolerated smaller devices such as a T-shaped device to enhance effectiveness so that it is more effective when it is inserted, or even they have added antifibrinolytic agents such as E-aminocaproic acid and tranexamic acid to larger IUDs to minimize the problem of bleeding and pain which the patients present with frequently and cause removal of the IUD. The copper T that we know today has been developed by Tatum. The T stands for Tatum and the T also stands for the T shape of the device to conform to better contour of the uterus and reduce the side effects significantly. Zipper in 1968 added contraceptive metals like copper, and Doyle and Cloday developed a progestin releasing IUDs. So there is a copper releasing IUD, there is a silver IUD, then there are this progestin releasing IUDs. This development initiated a new era of research and development or long-term contraception, leading to the generation of the recent IUDs, the medicated IUDs. Copper-bearing IUDs such as copper 7 and progesterone-releasing IUDs such as progestasert has thus evolved in the last 30 to 40 years. Now, if you see the location of the IUD, you can see that the copper, the T of the copper fits into both the ostia where the fallopian tube opens and the copper is inside the uterine cavity. It should be completely into the uterine cavity and not in the cervix. Only the threads or the strings should be there in the cervix, and we cut it here so that they go into the fornix and not hurt the patient or her husband. So if you see what are the types of the IUDs, the non-medicated IUDs we have already spoken about, the Grafenberg's ring, These IUDs have their contraceptive action by causing sterile inflammatory response in the endometrium because of the mechanical interaction, that is merely by their presence. They do not contain any therapeutic agent. The ring shaped IUDs, the plastic IUDs, the Lippes loop, the Dalkon shield, the Safety coil, these are the non-medicated IUDs. When we talk about medicated IUDs, we are basically talking about they develop pharmacologically active anti-fertility agents like the copper bearing IUDs and the progesterone releasing IUDs. Now the non-medicated IUDs, they do not contain any active agent. They predominantly use or the metal or plastic rings or coils, and rings of stainless steel have mechanical effects on the uterus leading to contraception. Plastic rings also act as a mechanical barrier. I don't think your generation has seen Lippes loop so much. Our generation, Lippes loop used to be inserted into the patients even without their knowledge. So when used to do hysterectomy, at times in opening the specimen, we used to see Lippes loop inside the uterus. So they were so inert. They were so inert that they never caused any reaction to the patient, or the patient never had any complications. They become menopausal with the ring, with the Lippes loop. Plastic rings made from sterile materials such as polyethylene or propylene were used.
Ma'am?
I know what this window is there.
Yes,
No?
yes.
I'm not able to.
Ma'am, can you start on the slideshow? It may go.
I am already on the slide.
Ma'am, the last one.
Okay, okay, chalo. Okay, chalo.
Till it is come.
Still there, still see.
Yeah, no problem, ma'am. We can continue.
I don't know, it's some Zoom thing anyway.
Yeah.
So we are. So the non-medicated IUDs have almost vanished from the market because of the following reasons: that the newer devices which are available, they are very safe and effective. There are certain they used to cause irregularities in menstrual bleeding. They had the inert IUDs had discomfort and low patient compliance, and they often caused pelvic inflammatory disease. The copper T, when we tell a patient, do you want to put copper T? They said no, 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 no. They say because the previous generation has suffered a lot from the pelvic inflammatory disease because of the copper T, and they show higher rates of pregnancies than non-medicated ones. So there are different shapes of the non-medicated IUDs. You can see there is this Dalkon's ring, this is this Lippes loop. Most commonly seen are these Lippes loop, and then there are these inert ones which have got like what we are seeing in the present copper T types. Now when we come to medicated IUDs, we are going to talk about copper bearing IUDs and the hormone releasing IUDs. The copper bearing IUDs, for example, copper 7 and the copper T, these devices use a copper wire which is wound to the stem. It is wound to the stem, and it is a T shape made of polyethylene plastic. There are various grades as per the surface area of the copper wire, such as copper T30, copper 200, and copper T380. The most commonly used ones are the copper T380, and which lasts for almost 10 to 12 years. Now, what is the mechanism of action of copper T? It is cytotoxic, and it is in a low concentration. It is a spermicidal and spermatodepressive. The contraceptive effectiveness is more, and the pregnancy rate is reduced to 5%. The copper wire thickness is anywhere between zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.4 millimeters in copper T. If you see mechanism of action, this is just a diagrammatic representation. Inability of the sperm to pass through the uterine cavity, thickening of the cervical mucus, interferes with the reproductive process before the ova reach the uterine cavity, and change in the endometrial lining. Clinical effectiveness, if we see, we can see that they are very, very effective. There is a thread which is there for removal, and these are very effective. The anti-fertility action of copper is very important here. That is why we are using the copper in the copper T. In high concentration, copper is cytotoxic. It enhances the spermatocidal and the spermatodepressive action of an IUD, and the cupric ion from the copper is a competitive inhibitor of progesterone and to lesser effect of the estrogen. Therefore, they evoke an inflammatory response in the endometrium. So it works in two ways. First, it invokes an inflammatory response in the endometrium, and it also affects the sperms and has got a spermicidal and a spermatodepressive action. The release of copper from the device is very slow and it is linear. there are various ways in which that copper is metabolized, like it can get chelated, it can get ionized, or there can be corrosion over a period of 12 years. So slowly over a period of 12 years, the copper which is getting released, it is metabolized in the endometrial cavity by chelation, by ionization and corrosion, and the release rate is directly proportional to the surface area of the copper T. So it is the copper T 380A. When we say it is 388 as a surface area of 380 square millimeter, and then it is approved by FDA for 10 years use, but we are also seeing its effectiveness up to 12 years. And the copper T 380 and the silver IUD, they differs only at the copper. IUD has got copper and the silver has got the silver core that slows the corrosion rate, but silver is being more costly and not widely available. The hormone releasing IUDs, that is Progestasert, a very useful this. Doyle and Clue first initiated the use of hormone releasing IUDs. These are released locally at the level of the endometrium. They carried human testing using conventional IUDs having contraceptive steroids. A T-shaped progesterone releasing IUD having vertical limb embedded with a drug containing silicone capsule was evolved, and it is coated with polymer, causing slow release of the progesterone. So the objective was to keep the IUD inside the uterus for a very long time and prevent its expulsion and slowly release the steroids. And then the release rate is 65 microgram per day for 1 year. Progestasert is there. In India we get Mirena. So we'll talk in detail about Mirena later on. Now this is the progesterone releasing IUD. There is a polyethylene, which is a base, forms the base of this, and there is ethylene vinyl acetate copper, and then it has got the threads. 38 milligram of progesterone are suspended in silicone oil and slowly released over a period of 6 to 7 years. Now, Progestasert was the first novel progesterone releasing IUD, and then it is loaded with 38 milligrams of progesterone, and the release rate is 65 microgram per day. It is approved by US FDA in 1975 for 12-month contraceptive use. So you can use it for 1 year, and we will have to reinsert it later on. It does not inhibit ovulation, but interferes with the implantation in the endometrium and thickening of the cervical mucus. Side effects are like any other progesterone. When we give progesterone only, a contraceptive device, menstrual problems, they have 12% have the copper T removed because of repeated bleeding, menstrual bleeding. Then it can cause perforation or it can cause expulsion. The most common cause of removal of IUCD is menstrual problems. There can be improper insertion and then perforation, or the IUCD itself over a period of 10 to 12 years can corrode into the uterine cavity and cause perforation, partial expulsion, or it can perforate and go into the abdominal cavity also. The IUD is got a very important, it's a very important method with a very good contraceptive potential, and it is time in India we start recognizing the importance of using the IUD. As a matter of fact, most IUD users are in China. Okay, and we can see that here that China users, they have this one child norm, and then the patient is immediately inserted an IUD, and more than 60% of the world's IUD are used in China. The contraceptive rates, if you see in India, about IUD is about 37% is IUD, and then the rest. But female sterilization and male sterilization also have a small portion here, and this major chunk, 37%, is IUD. Now, outdated safety concerns that have held back the IUD use, that Alkan Shield, like I said, was linked to septic miscarriage and pelvic inflammatory disease because it had now more multifilament tails. And then several biases in early research. They overstated the risk of PID and infertility. Therefore, patients were very scared that if you have the IUD inserted, you will not conceive again or you will not become pregnant again. And therefore, many patients are very scared of inserting the IUDs. The programmatic challenges have also held back the use, and initially the the nurses were trained to insert the IUD. In the past 15 years, nurses were trained, especially in the rural areas. The nurses used to insert the IUD. If the insertion is not proper, it had all the perforation and expulsion and all the other complications. Therefore, people were very, very scared of the IUDs. And now it has been withdrawn. Only doctors can insert the IUD. Modern IUDs are appropriate for women who seek reversible contraception. That is, if the IUD is removed, they can have their child whenever they want. It is time to pardon the IUD, and it is time we start using it more widely. Now, how do you ensure that your IUD does not cause any complication or does not cause any removal? We have to see that there is high quality care in appropriate screening, which patient is eligible for insertion of IUD. Informative counseling, we have to tell the patients 3 to 4 cycles you may have little heavy bleeding, or we may have to give you some medicines along with IUD. Adequate infection prevention methods and careful insertion. And nowadays, with the help of misoprostol, insertion has become very painless, and proper follow-up care of the IUD. This is what will ensure the safety of the IUD. The main IUDs that are currently used are the copper-bearing IUDs, the 380A, and the multi-load, which is 375, and the LNG IUD, or what we used to call it as Mirena. Now there are another 2-3 more which are already available. Now, who can use the IUDs? Who can use the copper IUDs? Who are proper candidates? They can be used by a woman of various ages and parity. Young and nulliparous women should be counseled of expulsion risk because their uterus has not sort of expanded and contracted. They are at a greater risk of expulsion. Postpartum, post-abortion, breastfeeding women, whether they can also be used. And chronic conditions like hypertension, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, gallbladder, all these patients can safely use the copper IUDs. Now, copper T IUD, the FDA recently liberalized the package labeling for copper IUD. Initially, they were not allowing nulliparous women to use the copper IUD. Now, even women who have never conceived or sometimes delayed adolescence also can now, we can insert copper T, and highly efficient, convenient IUD is approved for 10 years of use. Now, coming to levonorgestrel releasing intrauterine system, new reports of off-label non-contraceptive applications of LNG IUS. It's very effective for heavy menstrual bleeding, menorrhagia, including those associated with fibroids, and also for adenomyosis. And it is very much comparable like GnRH analogs for the symptomatic pelvic endometriosis. So what are the uses of IUDs? We used to think all these years that IUD for contraception, IUD for contraception. Now we have started thinking beyond contraception. Many progestin releasing IUDs are placed off label for non-contraceptive benefits like treatment of menorrhagia, and patient can achieve their goals like, have a delayed long-term, highly effective, convenient birth control and treatment for heavy bleeding without invasive and irrevocable surgical procedure. Now like these are some of the cases that we used to have. I would like to discuss a busy 29-year-old lawyer with 6-month-old child. She had heavy menstrual flow, irregular but not grossly enlarged uterus, small intramural fibroid, does not desire pregnancy in the future. So is she a good candidate for copper T? Yes, she's a very good candidate of copper T 320A. She already has a 6-month-old child. She's 29 years and she has got a heavy menstrual flow, but then there are only small intramural fibroids. So if we can put copper T, if we can add something for the heavy menstrual flow along with that, like a tranexamic acid or something during the periods, and then if the uterus is very grossly enlarged and the IUD cannot be inserted or there is some problem with the cavity, we need to assess the cavity before inserting IUD in this patient. Now, contraceptive options that reduce menorrhagia or oral contraceptives or DMPA, they can be combined with IUCDs, extended cycle ring or pills, and implants. IUCD LNG makes sense of women, those who have baseline menorrhagia. We can give them the option of going for IUCD with LNG. But only thing is these patients can go into amenorrhea, and Indian women don't take amenorrhea that easily. Now, bleeding in with even LNG-IUS or copper T380A are very much reduced with NSAIDs and tranexamic acid, when though they can be very comfortably used during the periods. Now, breastfeeding, and we cannot use combined hormonal contraception, so they are. Can we insert IUD for the overweight women? Yes, a very good contraception can be given for overweight women, because we cannot give them oral contraceptive, and during surgical procedures like sterilization or something, they can have anesthesia complications. Now, like I told you, thick abdominal wall, anesthesia risks, other surgical risks are there. So IUDs can also be used for long acting and efficacious medical therapy. DVT risk and recommended therapy in hormonal patients. If we give oral contraceptive pills, there is a DVT risk, but with copper T, there is no DVT risk, and it can be comfortably used. Even levonorgestrel releasing IUD is not contraindicated in those patients who have had DVT. Now, the 10-year follow-up and case resolution, patient chose copper T IUD 10 years later. Should the IUD be removed at around the menopausal age? Can it be continued? We leave it to the patient to take the call. If the patient is not having any complaints, she can jolly well continue these patients. Oral contraceptive pills and the other option, the DMPA rings, patches, either IUCD is a good option for these long-term contraceptions. Now, immediate birth control with long-term effect, 32-year-old patient, unprotected intercourse. Remember, IUDs are interceptive. They prevent implantation. So they can be safely used even for emergency contraception. For emergency contraception, within 7 days of intercourse, they can get the IUD inserted, and it can be used for even emergency contraception. Okay, the next case is a 27-year-old woman with the early pregnancy of 10 weeks for termination. She smokes. So oral contraceptive pills is out of question. One's option for contraception, IUD is a very good option. The best option for her is an IUD insertion after the termination of pregnancy. So please use IUDs more frequently. It's a very excellent method, highly effective compared to female sterilization, but still it is reversible. 12 to fertility, or even in HIV AIDS. So what are the rules for success? We have to encourage. One time motivation is required for IUD. Patient need not be motivated every month. We have to promptly encourage her. Use patient centered counseling to enhance adherence. Inform about the high efficacy method. Don't doctor themselves, they have a fear about IUDs, so they remove that fear. Offer her IUDs. Don't let systems issue interfere, and educate her about all the contraception. That is a cafeteria approach. If whatever she wants, she can decide. Tell her about the condoms, the oral contraceptive pills, the intrauterine contraceptive device, and the family planning operations, and let her decide what she wants. Once she decides that I want copper T, the chances of she continuing the copper T is much more. What about the postpartum IUCD? If we accept that pregnancy spacing of about at least 24 months, that is 2 years, is recommended, and we recognize that there is large unmet need for postpartum, most patients conceive within 1 year of delivery. Therefore, there is a lot of this for postpartum IUCD, and each of us should get trained for postpartum IUCD and insert it at delivery. Then postpartum IUCD is the answer. On IUCD is alternative to tubectomy for some couples, and immediate postpartum insertion is very, very convenient for many women. They don't have to come repeatedly to a hospital, and it will, the bleeding that they have during the after the delivery will cover the bleeding that happens because of the IUD. There is a lot of now interest in the IUD, especially from the postpartum angle, and we are rediscovering a languishing innovation. Despite all the persistent misconceptions, IUD users have high satisfaction rates and continuation rates when compared to the other methods. The risk of PID in IUD users is very, very negligible. So we have talked about what is the mechanism of action, effectiveness, length of the use, advantages and limitation, the client assessment, and side effect and precautions. So this is copper T380A. So this is the horizontal arm, the vertical stem, and the strings, effective for 12 years, but it is actually approved for 10 years. We have all seen this. Now, this chart actually each of you must have in your clinic when you counsel the patient, and how we are going to counsel patient from least effective to most effective. This is the withdrawal method, the spermicide, the cervical scab, sponge, female condom. This is available. This is WHO 2006. It's available on the WHO website. And this is very, very important to counsel patients. Where does IUD stand? So it's a one-time procedure, nothing to do or remember, no need to repeat injection, you must take a pill every day if they're going to follow pills. Therefore, it is very, very effective, and one of your pregnancies per 100 women years, so it is most effective. Then the WHO eligibility criteria, we talked about it last time, even when we talked about the oral contraceptive pills. Category 1 is no restriction. Category 2 is advantages outweigh the risks, so we generally use. 3 is risk outweigh the advantages, so we do not use. And category 4 is too risky. So IUDs, who should not use? Where, in which patients does IUD go in category 4? IUCD should not be used if a woman is pregnant or known or suspected pregnancies, unexplained vaginal bleeding, and just now she is having pelvic inflammatory disease, gonorrhea or chlamydia, acute purulent pus-like discharge, distorted uterine cavity because of multiple fibroids, multiple surgeries, lot of intrauterine adhesions, malignant trophoblastic disease, pelvic tuberculosis, and any genital cancer. This is the WHO category 4 for IUDs. IUCDs should not be used in these patients. Then who falls in the category 3? If patient is HIV positive but no antiretroviral therapy is there, a high risk for gonorrhea and chlamydia, and where the partner has got an infection, the ovarian cancer, benign trophoblastic disease, we could insert unless the woman chooses some other method. Now, the postpartum IUCD, the medical eligibility criteria are less specific in the area. The category 4 is immediately after septic abortion, especially if there has been sepsis and there is abortion, then we do not insert the postpartum IUCD. Immediately after puerperal sepsis, or there is unresolved postpartum hemorrhage. Category 3 is between 2 days and 4 weeks. We should not insert a postpartum IUCD. If there is prolonged rupture of membrane and possibility of an infection, then we should not use. And category 1 is immediate post placental, that is as soon as placenta is expelled we should insert it, if not within 2 days or less than 48 hours. If we miss this with 2 days period, then we have to wait for 4 weeks, and we can insert IUD only after 4 weeks. So 48 hours to 4 weeks is the gap where we cannot use the postpartum IUCD. Now, if the woman has had a full-term normal pregnancy, we can imagine that she doesn't have a distorted uterine cavity, she doesn't have trophoblastic disease, she doesn't have pelvic tuberculosis, cervical endometrial cancer, fulminant HIV, unexplained vaginal bleeding, so we can safely insert the postpartum IUCD. The more likely precautions are there if there is unresolved hemorrhage, if there is chorioamnionitis or puerperal sepsis, rupture of membranes more than 18 hours, and purulent cervicitis, we will have to take a lot of precautions. This is a chart which is available. Again, this is available at the WHO website. This is called as a PPIUCD pre-insertion screening. This is a quick checklist. We can, just to take yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. If you attach it to the paper, you know that if she's a candidate for PPIUCD or not. The post-partum insertion has a lot of advantages as well as limitations. Advantages is very effective, reversible long-term method, safe, convenient, and no risk of perforation or infection, does not affect the quality of or the quantity of the breast milk, great coverage of the population, because every patient is going to come to a hospital to deliver. So immediately, if you put copper T in these patients postpartum IUCD, you cover a very large amount of the population. The limitations are there could be change in the monthly bleeding pattern, slightly higher rate of expulsion as the uterus contracts and comes back to its normal side. But if we have got a trained provider, and with there is almost up to 92% retention is there, and only thing is it requires special training of the providers. Anemia, Monthly menstrual bleeding increases slightly with the IUCD, especially in the first 3 months, but blood loss, which results in anemia, causing anemia, is actually quite rare. Therefore, it is safe to provide an anemic women with an IUCD, which falls in the WHO MEC category 2. If the woman is anemic and has an IUCD in place, we have to treat the anemia with iron and folate and give her something to control the heavy bleeding if she does have it. First we have to treat her medically and then consider removing of the IUD. Now there is a Cochrane database in 2003 which reviewed the safety of the postpartum IUCD, and then they said that the expulsion rates are very variable and copper T 380A is better than Lipi's loop and Progestacert for the postpartum IUCD. So they concluded that immediate postpartum insertion of IUCD is very safe and effective because it is very high motivation. Just now she has undergone all the pain and everything, so she's highly motivated, and there's an assurance that the woman is not pregnant. Very convenient, she's already in the hospital. Few contraindications are there. Expulsion rates are slightly higher than the interval population, and early follow-up because the patient is going to come to you postpartum anyway for follow-up. Now, the postpartum IUCD insertion and active management in third stage of labor, there is no increase in IUCD expulsion or perforation if we give methergine or misoprostol or prostadine to this patient. And then the postpartum insertion has lower risk of expulsion and perforation than the postpartum insertion. Therefore, it is ideal to insert it immediately after the placenta is expelled. The timing is they can be inserted right after birth, within 10 minutes after the placenta is expelled, and soon after the birth, that is less than 48 hours after delivery. You can even do it during intra-cesarean section, and once we miss this 48 hours, then 4 or more weeks postpartum. IUCD should not be inserted between 48 hours and 4 weeks because there is increased risk of expulsion and perforation. Now, this is how the post-placental insertion is done. Either we can do it with hand, or we can do it with even sponge holder, or there is a separate forceps which is available for that. Even that can be used. So even manual insertion is good, or even instrumental insertion, whatever we want, we can do. There is a training, US AIDs, and there are a lot of CHIPIGO. They conduct a lot of training for the post-placental insertion. Then overview of the step, the most important part of the IUCD insertion postpartum is counseling. If you don't counsel the patient properly, whatever happens to them in the postpartum period, the backache, the white discharge, the pain in abdomen, everything will be attributed to the copper T. We have to ensure that the instruments are ready, confirm that the woman wants the method, identify the cervix and clean with antiseptic twice. We can use betadine or we can use Savlon, antiseptic is available. We can use that, and we have to clean it twice and slowly insert the IUCD. It's very, very important to ensure the fundal placement. Okay, this lady is talking to the woman and taking her consent. Then these are the instruments that are available. This is a sponge holder, and this is an instrument which is very similar to the sponge holder, only there is no catch there. You need a sim speculum, the copper T, and the cotton swab to clean the cervix twice. Now she is making her breastfeed the baby and again asking for consent. The cervix is cleaned with the swab, and then it is slowly inserted with hand on the fundus. So there is a fundal placement. The trick is to go inside with the instrument closed and to come out the instrument open, so that you don't tend to pull the thread or the copper T back when you are coming outside. So once the copper T is kept on the fundus, immediately move the instrument in the side and come out with the instrument open, so that nothing gets trapped in the instrument. The risk of expulsion and timing of insertion, the expulsion rates vary from 3 to 35%. In a well-trained person, it can be anywhere between 5 to 8%. In general, the expulsion rate of PP-IUCD range from 10 to 14%. Even if 10 to 14% of the population it gets expelled, the rest are actually accepting it. So it is a very good method. And the post-placental, that is immediately after the placenta is delivered, the post-placental expulsion rates are lower than the postpartum expulsion rates. So the expulsion rates are actually related to the provider and their training. So what should you do if you are getting more expulsion rate? You train yourself and do more insertion. The more insertions you do, the better you are at becoming doing the insertion. So we have to use a correct technique, place all the way to the fundus, sweep instrument to the side, take care that the IUCD does not come out during withdrawal, and Kelly's placental forceps. This is a curved longer forceps, similar like a sponge holding forceps. It has got a little curve and no catch. Insert at the correct time. The post placental insertion is better than the within 48 hours insertion. We do not cut the strings while placing the IUCD postpartum. During cesarean section, we do not pass the strings to the cervix. We leave it in the lower segment. Along with the blood, it will percolate and it will come out through the cervix. The strings will typically descend during involution and curl in the posterior vaginal fornix. Sometimes they may remain in the uterus, but this is not a problem. Strings can be cut at subsequent visit, and then the strings should be cut only if the woman complains or they protrude from the introitus. Otherwise it gets curled around the vertical limb of the of this property, and it remains inside the uterus. A lot of myths and misconceptions, we must work at it. IUCDs do not cause pelvic inflammatory disease. Insertion, if there is undiagnosed cervicitis, may result in IUD or PID. Therefore, if there is any infection or clinical signs of infection, then we must not insert. It does not increase the risk of contracting sexually transmitted diseases, does not make a woman infertile, does not increase the risk of miscarriage, no birth defect, no cancer, and does not cause any other pain or discomfort during sex, and subsequently reduces the risk of ectopic pregnancy by reducing the chances of pregnancy itself. So to summarize, postpartum IUCD is a safe and convenient way to provide an effective long-term method. It's a part of a refocus on the health benefits of family planning. Limitations of the method are few, especially the postpartum precautions. The insertion times include post-placental, postpartum, and intracesarean. Expulsion rates are related to the provider skill. Therefore, if you have having more expulsion rates, please train yourself and insert more and more, and you will be able to do it better. Now coming to LNG-IUS, this is a very important form of IUCD. So what is Mirena? It has got a hormone cylinder, it is a T-shaped plastic frame, and there are threads like any other IUD. It's a T-shaped device having a collar to the vertical arm. It contains 52 milligrams LNG, and duration of use is 5 years, and Pearl index is 0.1 per 100 years of use. And it is licensed in UK for the contraception, but in India we use more than contraception, we use it for the non-contraceptive use. Remember, it is not an abortifacient. It prevents conception by causing local foreign body reaction. Sperm transport is inhibited and sperm survival and capacitation is affected. Therefore, it prevents implantation, and it is an interceptive, and it is not a contraceptive, and it is not an abortifacient. So what are the practice changes? The medical eligibility criteria changes. IUD use in women younger than 20 years is safe in category 2. So actinomyces, bacterial vaginosis, trichomoniasis, and cervicitis do not require IUD removal. They require to be treated. If PID does occur in an IUD user, the treatment is same as a non-IUD user, and removal is not necessary. So what is new in Mirena? The FDA label changes. The cavity depth is 6 to 10 centimeter. Pregnancy is very, very rare. I have never seen a pregnancy with Mirena, but pregnancy, if happens with the device in situ, it is not associated with any birth defects, and no incidence of increased risk of breast cancer, no adverse effects on health, development of breastfeeding infants, removed from contraindication list, that is ectopic and risk factors for the ectopic pregnancy. Which age group is suitable? All age groups are suitable for insertion of Mirena. We can insert Mirena in adolescent with PCO with menorrhagic cycles. We can use it for puberty menorrhagia. We can use it for contraception. We can use it for perimenopausal menorrhagia. And any patient who is unfit for hysterectomy is a correct candidate for Mirena. and patients who cannot take estrogen, they all can insert Mirena. When to insert? Any time during the menses, any other time if she has used appropriate contraception, she was not sexually active, or her pregnancy test is negative and she has come to you, you can insert Mirena anytime after pregnancy, spontaneous abortion, miscarriage, induced abortion. Precaution is the emergency drugs including anti-epileptic medication should be available at the time of insertion if the woman is known to have epilepsy, because there is an increased risk of a seizure at the time of cervical dilatation, and she can also have vasovagal attack with cervical dilatation, and we always have to exclude pregnancy. Mirena is little thicker than the copper T380A, therefore misoprostol can be given in advance before inserting the Mirena. It has become very smooth to insert that. Cervical priming with sublingual misoprostol prior to insertion of an IUCD. There is a randomized control trial which has said that it is got a very good use, but the pain scores are no different in the two groups. Insertion is easier with misoprostol than the control group, and shivering, diarrhea are more common in the misoprostol group. So the tips to the healthcare professional is IUD is not contraindicated in nulliparous women of any age. Even if the patient has not conceived or delivered, we can still use IUD. Women of all ages may use intrauterine system, can be used in women who are breastfeeding. No evidence that effectiveness of intrauterine system is reduced when taking other medications. Not contraindicated in women with diabetes mellitus, and women with history of venous thromboembolism can use intrauterine system. This is a WHO eligibility criteria for initiating contraceptive methods. Now, we have seen all this. What are the risk for LNG-IUS? If the woman is hypertension, controlled hypertension, she goes in WHO risk 1. Cardiovascular factors, risk 2. DVT or pulmonary embolism, WHO risk category 2. Stroke is 2. Valvular heart disease is 2. HIV is 2. And AIDS is also 2. And known thrombogenic mutations 2. Migraines with aura 2. Epilepsy is 1. Obesity 1. Thyroid disorders 1. But migraines and hepatitis is also 1. Migraine is 2. So they have classified according to the medical condition. Okay, this we have already seen. What is the category 1, 2, 3, and 4? Now, is there a need for routine screening of hormonal contraceptive users? In 2004, WHO selected practice recommendations for contraceptive use. They said DP should be initiated before all hormonal contraceptives, not recommended as contributing substantially to safe and effective use of contraceptive method. Breast genital examination wherever possible, cancer, cervical cancer screening, sexually transmitted disease assessment or lab screening, hemoglobin, and other routine tests wherever possible we should do before doing any contraception to these patients. How long can Mirena be used after insertion? Lifetime is actually 5 years, but there is margin of 2 years over the recommended 5 years. Normal menstruation they start getting by 5 to 6 years. What are the side effects? On the menstrual pattern, irregular bleeding and spotting in the first 6 months of use, oligomenorrhea and amenorrhea by the end of first year of use, acne, all the progesterone related complications, acne. There can be uterine perforation, developing PID, expulsion, and the risk of ectopic pregnancy. So amenorrhea is the main apprehension caused by amenorrhea. They can be minimized by appropriate counseling, and user satisfaction strongly correlates with the counseling. The bleeding patterns in 1 to 4 months, they have irregular bleeding. 2 to 6 months, there is reduction in the amount and the duration of the bleeding. 20% will have amenorrhea by the end of 1 year. Overall, there is a significant reduction in the bleeding. So what were the main reasons for premature removal? Bleeding problems, the intermenstrual bleeding, many patients were not able to take. The amenorrhea, they were not able to accept. Pain and acne were the other reasons where they had to remove. So what are the beneficial local action of LNG? There is no change in the blood pressure, serum lipids, coagulation factor, carbohydrate metabolism, and liver function. So if you see the 5-year cumulative pregnancy rate, it is very, very efficacious. I have not seen a single pregnancy with Mirena. The pelvic inflammatory disease also is not at all significant with Mirena when compared to the other IUDs. Return to fertility after removal of IUD takes about 6 months. After LNG IUS takes about 6 months, and the copper T return to fertility is much earlier than the Mirena. So what are the other health benefits? There is reduction in the amount and duration of bleeding. There is reduction in the incidence of ectopic pregnancy, menstrual cramps, lot of non-contraceptive benefits used in treatment of DUB and menorrhagia, in HRT for endometrial protection, treatment and prevention of anemia, progesterone source for the hormone replacement therapy, endometriosis, and the protection of uterus in tamoxifen therapy. When the patient has breast cancer and they are given tamoxifen, we can safely insert the LNG-IUS so that the uterine endometrium is protected with progesterone. How is the insertion of LNG-IUS different from copper T? So it has got a slightly wider diameter, therefore little more dilatation is required, may need anesthesia, the shape of the instrument, and it is a push out technique rather than a pull through technique. So what is the follow up? It's the same as that of copper T. Some special experiences: LNG IUS for endometrial protection in women on breast cancer with adjuvant tamoxifen, special experiences with Mirena, and the Cochrane database systematic review 2009. They say that it can also be used for emergency contraception. Remember, Mirena can also be used for emergency contraception. Therapeutic use of LNG-IUS for menorrhagia due to benign lesions, which is an alternative to hysterectomy. It can be used to cause amenorrhea, the management of endometriosis. So this is the end of the lecture. Thank you for a patient listening. Will you change your practice and will you use more IUDs is the question that I want to ask the listeners.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. We'll wait for the answer. Till that time, we can take another questions, ma'am, on the chat box. What to give for the amenorrhea?
Mirena.
Yes.
We want the amenorrhea, no, for Mirena. What to give? Nothing to give. We have to just counsel patients. That is it. Where is
contraception for adolescent girls?
Where is it? Volume is very low, they said.
No, ma'am, it is perfect. There may be some network problem.
Okay. Previous slide somebody wanted anyway. Like Saheli, can we use Leuprolide to prevent spotting? No, you use Saheli only to prevent spotting from Mirena insertion. Why do you want to use Leuprolide? It is very costly. The injection GnRH is very costly. Instead, you use oral contraceptive pills for 3 cycles, or you use even the Saheli only. Along with IUD, sometimes for 3 months, if you give Novex DS or the Scent Chroma, it is very, very effective. You can give it. You can give GnRH also, not a problem, but it is very costly. So instead, you can give even Saheli. IUD safety slide. Okay, I'll just see. Eligibility criteria for IUD: best contraception for adolescent girl is copper T. If she has no menorrhagia, if she is not PCOD, if she has no bleeding problems, then copper T380A. If she has any problem, then you can give her Mirena, provided she is okay with the amenorrhea. Karthan Acharya is asking me on Implanon. Somebody is taking, no? Implanon?
Yes, ma'am. Sureka ma'am has covered
Minal?
that. Yes, ma'am.
Karthan, somebody has taken, otherwise I will take it for you. Why not to insert between 48 hours and 4 weeks? Because there is a risk of expulsion. The expulsion is much more when it is inserted between 48 hours and 4 weeks, and the chances of infection are also more. These are 2 reasons why we do not allow postpartum insertion between 48 hours and 4 weeks. Because after 48 hours, we don't even do a postpartum tubal ligation. You know that, no? Yes. We do postpartum tubal ligation only till 2 days. Otherwise, we do it after 4 weeks. This is the reason, because infection is a very big chance. In PPIUCD, then
how is copper T inserted during cesarean?
Inserted during with the hand, simply with the hand. Remove the T, hold it with the hand, or even with the sponge on without the sponge holder, without the sponge. Just insert it and ensure a fundal placement. That is the very most important thing. Don't put the thread to the cervix. Leave the thread in the lower segment. Only be careful that you don't tick it in your stitch when you are closing the lower segment. Stepwise management of missing of the IUCD. First of all, do a thorough clinical examination. If you cannot see the thread, do an ultrasound and see if the IUD is in place. If the IUD is in place, then you tell the patient that either the thread has got wound up to the IUD and it is not seen. If the ultrasound is showing the IUD in proper place, we don't need to do anything. We can just call her after follow for another follow-up after 3 or 4 months. But suppose the IUD is misplaced, or it is moved away, or it has come down, or there is some fracture of the IUD, then we need to remove it and reinsert the other IUD. Management of intermittent bleeding after IUD. You can use Saheli, or you can use plain tranexamic acid, mefenamic acid combination. Chances of ectopic pregnancy with IUD very, very less, because IUD reduces the chances of pregnancy itself. So, ectopic pregnancy is a very small percentage of pregnancy. So because of that, it reduces the chances of ectopic pregnancy also. How to follow no touch technique? We have to be sterile as much as possible, and you can hold the rods inside the plastic and put it into the inserter. There is a way to do it. It is available online on the net, you can see. Otherwise we can even show it in you can hold it from outside, and then just there is a no touch technique is there. How to counsel patient for insertion? We have to tell her, I have inserted copper T, which you can use about 10 to 12 years. It is going to give you a very good contraception. There won't be, you can have some little bleeding problems now and then you need to take the tranexamic acid, mefenamic acid combination for 3 cycles. I definitely give for 3 cycles. And then afterwards, once they come to you for one follow-up sonography, you find that the copper T is properly placed inside the uterus, then you can call them for yearly follow-up. Should antibiotic be routinely given? If you are doing it post-abortion, or if you are doing it post some procedure, then you definitely need to give antibiotic. Otherwise, copper T by itself does not need antibiotic. Follow-up, one follow-up you have to call after one period, immediately after one period, to check for. After that, you can call for 3 months for with the sonography, and then yearly follow-up. It is written Mirena is, yes, used in puberty menorrhagia. Correct. It is used in puberty menorrhagia. It can be used in puberty menorrhagia because these patients become very anemic, the puberty menorrhagia patients, and they tend to have repeated episodes of puberty menorrhagia. So better to have, like amenorrhea for 3 to 4 years, and then we can decide what to do. By that time, the patient's anemia will be corrected and they'll be much better. What to give for amenorrhea? It is a we want that. If you want to give pills, then because of urgency will be. Please repeat MEC criteria for IUCD. Okay, I'll show that. Then how to decide about Mirena in perimenopausal women? Do FSH, to confirm that the woman has gone in menopause. Once you do FSH and you have confirmed that the woman has gone in menopause, remove. There is no need for any Mirena, copper, anything. In PP, IUCD, follow-up thread is not visible. What to do? In about 60% of the cases of PP, IUCD, the thread is not seen because it is wound to the vertical arm of the copper. It's very good because there is no chances of infection. So nothing to do, just do a sonography. If it is in place, there is no need for at the time of removal. If you just slightly try to put an artery and tease, you will be able to get the thread. Still, if you are not able to get, there is a IUCD removal hook. With that, you will be definitely able to remove it. If even after that you are not able to remove, then you need to do a hysteroscopic removal of the IUCD. Management of pregnancy with IUCD in situ, when to remove, depends on where the IUCD is. Do a sonography. If it is somewhere close to the cervix, then you can safely remove it. But if it is very high up, then it is better not to touch the copper T at all. Let the patient go to term and search for it at delivery. The patient comes with amenorrhea, we counsel her. But if she comes out to be pregnant, no. Don't insert copper T in any patient who comes to you with amenorrhea. No, you have to first give her a copper T or Mirena or whatever is inserted during menses. So if the patient comes with amenorrhea, you will treat the amenorrhea first. Give her withdrawal or do her pregnancy test. And if she doesn't get withdrawal, you're not going to insert. No, we call her on the during the second day to the fifth day of the period, whether you want to insert Mirena or whether you want to insert 380A. It is inserted how many days? Within 7 days. Mirena for emergency contraception, like copper T 380A, you can insert it within 7 days. Self-examination method, yes, advisable. Smart patients can examine, doctors can examine their own threads. If patient insists, can we continue? Yes, you can continue pregnancy with copper T 380A. When Rohini Raut, she has asked, we need to do UPT when she comes with complaint of amenorrhea. If she has IUD in situ and sonography is showing IUD in situ and she is still having amenorrhea and she is worried, then you can do UPT. But otherwise, it isn't to cause amenorrhea. No? Mirena is for treatment, for causing amenorrhea. Push technique is you insert with help of pushing, and pull technique is you just withdrawal. It is not pull, withdrawal technique it is called as. Saheli to be used once a week. See, Saheli we give twice a week for 3 months, followed by once a week for the next 3 months. So totally we give it for 6 months. Pregnancy with copper T in situ, what are the complications? Chances of bleeding and abortion. These are the safety side. Copper T candidate slide. During menstrual cycle, does menstrual cycle become regular? Yes. Once you remove LNG IUD, menstrual cycle becomes regular. Does menstrual cycle become regular after amenorrhea caused by LNG IUD? Yes. Once you remove the LNG IUD, menstrual cycle becomes very regular. Copper T as emergency contraception within 7 days. Should be inserted within 7 days of unprotected sex. Does risk of perforation increase with no risk of perforation in pregnancy and IUD in situ? Nothing happens. Risk of perforation is only at the time of insertion, not otherwise, not after that. Is that all? No, they wanted some slides, no?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for patiently answering all the questions.
Okay, 1 minute now. Tell me what slides are needed. Will somebody give me an indication?
One is
Sorry,
the
no,
copper T.
Wait, let me go. Copper T, what do you want?
Safety.
I also don't remember. Okay, so this is the first slide. This is the second slide. This is history, how they were developed, location of the IUD types.
This one, ma'am.
This one?
Previous to this one, yes.
No. This?
No.
I'll show you.
Ma'am, previous to.
Previous?
Yes, previous. The safety slide, that blue color slide of the previous safety in the IUD. That was missing because that greenish color was there on the slide.
This one?
This one, ma'am. Yes. Who can use copper T IUD?
Then they wanted the MAC criteria, no? This is the WHO eligibility criteria, medical eligibility criteria. This is in general the 4 categories, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And who should not use? This is category 4.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
This is WHO 2004. It is there on all WHO website. Who should not use IUCDs?
Yes, ma'am.
This is category 3.
Continue. Coming second trimester. Ma'am, question from the chat box. If suppose patient coming second trimester with copper T in situ, then we need to continue.
Yeah, she has to continue only. No need to remove. If do a sonography and if the copper T is very close to the cervix, then maybe we can slightly pull it and take it out. But if it is a fundus laterally placed, we don't touch the copper T anytime. First trimester, second trimester, third trimester, we don't touch the copper T at all.
Yes, ma'am. Done with almost all the questions from the chat box. Ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Chalega, this is over. Can I?
Yes,
MEC
ma'am.
criteria is over.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Shall I stop share?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chalo, thank you all
Yes.
for a patient hearing.
Thank you,
Chalo,
ma'am.
thank you. Yeah,
Yes.
bye.
Good night, ma'am.
Good night.
Priyanka, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah, I'll start. Hello.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can hear you. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So